the spokesperson of the Atiku campaign, presidential campaign organization, Segun Showunmi. I'm very pleased to have you here with me this evening.
Thank you for having me. Good evening, Nigerians.
Okay, well, first of all, I just want to get your assessment of the 2019 presidential election. I would imagine that your political party is not too pleased.
Disgraceful. If there was one adjective that could just capture everything, it would be disgraceful. Look, we have begun this democratic journey in 1999. And between 1999 and 2019, we have 20 years. In 20 years, we've done a series of elections, with one set of election struggling to be an improvement on the other. Just before the 2019 election, there was a huge opportunity for the President Muhammadu Buhari, to append his signature to the improved Electoral Act, an act that sought to give us a more credible process that will make it a bit less intrusive and give us a framework to correct some of the potential errors or weaknesses that existed. The guy said no. And so we went to the 2019 election persuaded that, okay, if the act that was used to do the election in 2015 and the human error and the logistic issues and the gaps that were seen then, underage voting and all that, if INEC haven't asked for a larger size of the chunk of the budget for their work, that we could, with tongue in check, just go into that election, hoping that if that could get us 2015, probably we could do better with 2019.
So you're not...
2019 has turned out to be an embarrassment to everybody that is a Nigerian, the friends of Nigerian, members of the international community, anybody that is in a democracy. Even those in a dictatorship are embarrassed. Why are they embarrassed? I can't remember the last time we saw the kind of orgy of violence all over the country. There would always be one or two issues, but the scale this time around is scary. The language of the commander-in-chief, the president, before the election was shoot outside if anybody was interfering with the process. And we saw the military, the police, and all security organizations go out in areas that could be considered to be traditional PDP enclaves. And we saw voter suppression, people, and then we turned into the areas that maybe they used to do well, and we saw brigandage, thugs, criminals completely hijack the process. And as if the breakdown of law and order or the sanctity of the space by which electorates were made to take the decision was not bad enough that it was being defiled, then we also saw what you can call a difficult to accept new low in how INEC conducted itself. We had inconclusive elections now becoming the order of the day. People were just flying in and out of court. INEC couldn't even follow its own guidelines. It couldn't have the courage to carry out functions that had been given it in the Electoral Act.
But INEC
The
would argue...
whole place was just a huge mess.
INEC would
when
argue
the
that
results...
it's political actors that cause inconclusive elections.
Look.
That it's actions of political actors that cause these cancellations that ultimately...
Were you around in 1999? Were you around in 2003? Were you around in 2007? Were you around in 2011? Were you around in 2015? Have you ever seen anything that resembled this? Even in areas where people could say, oh, maybe some form of election took place, it was at great cost on the will and determinations of Nigerians in those environments. It was as if the entire system was designed to frustrate innocent Nigerians who were entitled to carry out their civic responsibility of voting for the leader of their choice. And when you then look at how the results were relayed and how INEC was very hasty to jump into saying, oh, we have declared somebody duly elected, when they, by their own admission, still had some inconclusive elections, even at the presidential elections to do. They had some rerun in some locations. By their own admission, the number of votes that were cancelled or invalid was such that it superseded and outweighed the so-called 4 million votes that was dashed. You will just find out that even if you stepped out of the whole process and just take a look at what's going on in other democracies and how, like Nigeria, some other countries come into elections and do another elections, and everybody seems to have gotten the hang of how to go about the process. And for the first time, we seem to have fallen lower than our own expectation. So we've not had an election in 2019, if you ask me.
Well, I want to take you
2019.
up on some of the things that the All Progressives Congress have been saying. They
What's
say
that?
that the reason why the PDP did not or was not declared the winner of this election is because of the baggage that its candidate had. For example, allegations of corruption and things like that, and saying that that, in addition to some internal conflict, are the reason why, and saying that President Muhammadu Buhari was actually an overwhelmingly popular candidate, person who's not perceived as
whoever said that, with due respect to the person, is insane. You cannot, in real sense, expect people to continue to enthrone and give authority to people who have made their lives miserable. That's not how a democracy works. Unless, of course, you're saying we have commenced a process of revised evolution, which means that we're moving from being humans and we're trying to become Neanderthals. There is no basis for you to think that people feel that the employment issues were heavy, the country had become the poverty capital of the world, the entire place were now the misery capital of the world. People couldn't even, general schools were locked up for so long with a strike with the teachers. They couldn't put their hands on minimum wage. There was no basis for anybody to think that decent people in a democracy will exercise their franchise on the part of a bunch of crooks who were at best also very, very parochial and sectional in their approach to country. The country was so divided.
But
So,
the APC
contrary
has
to
repeatedly
what they're saying,
attributed that to 16 years of PDP governance,
I have-
and continue to do so.
Donald Trump, the president of the United States of America, took over government in America after Barack Obama had finished his reign, and people thought, okay, the American economy was in bad shape. They needed to get a lot of things fixed. They needed to create jobs. Did you even hear? Have you ever heard anywhere in the world where someone takes over power in a democracy, signs up to taking over from another government, and spends 4 years just making those kinds of irritating excuses? They give the impression that Nigeria we weren't alive throughout the 16-year period to be able to see the incremental progress that the country made, including even the liberalization of the political space. So the argument they put on the table is not only lazy, it's annoying, it's unresearched, and it's false. Every election is a referendum on the people that are in charge then. Sometimes they do so well and people give them a second time. But there is nowhere in the world, except when you are going to crookedly and corruptly take it by manipulating the process, do you ever see people reinforce failure when they have the opportunity of voting? And the evidence is there. You can look at what's going on in Kano now. Traditionally, you would have given it that, once they come up in Kano, people are going to line up with them. Look at the numbers. They had to do a rerun, an inconsequential, inconclusive election, bring out soldiers, send out the thugs, start whipping everybody just to be able to get that paltry numbers after trying so hard to cook the books. And in spite of their cookery, PDP was still able to get over 1 million. So you can almost tell that there is a general frustration throughout the land because the people of those localities where those elections took place know precisely what happened. How do you explain to the people in Okota in Lagos that were suppressed, beaten, prevented from casting their vote, mostly where you have the Igbo people living? How do you explain to them that they're supposed to believe in this democracy? How do you explain to somebody in Rivers, a citizen of Rivers, who's watching the entire place become a theater of the absurd, where they just, the military, the police, everything is just going haywire, people are getting killed? How do you explain to someone in southern Kaduna? How do you tell the guy in Kano who knows in his heart of heart that they voted for the PDP in all of those elections? How do you tell them that this is right? And how do you pull all the numbers together and then you find out that in spite of the brigandage, they couldn't even bring evidence that they have justified numbers? I'm telling you, if you don't know, let me say to you.
Let me
His
just
Excellency Atiku Abubakar's campaign and the PDP campaign, presidential campaign, has laid before the panel the petition. And I tell you, you are going to find out that even within the body of that petition, on the fact side, fact, I'm not talking about technical jargons. On fact, there is everything in there to show that Article 1 fair, Article 1 square.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wanted to move in that direction, but
Okay.
just as a prelude to that, when INEC announced that the election had been moved by a week, there was a PDP caucus meeting, and in that meeting, the PDP candidate, Abubakar Atiku, made certain allegations that he was aware that certain technologies were applied to make the card readers slow in PDP strongholds and then to work faster in APC strongholds. He's not provided any evidence to back these allegations or the allegations that he made.
When you get to the point where you have to provide evidence, which is obviously court, evidence will be provided, but for the purposes of all of us, that some of you or some of them will make all of us look corrupt, stupid, and insincere, the first question I want to ask you around the card reader is this. Does it make sense to you or to listening Nigerians that the person who has the contract to supply the equipment was a senatorial candidate of the APC? Think about it. The guy has an interest in the elections. He belongs to their party, and he is the one that has to provide the equipment that plays such a critical role. Science and technology and computer and ICT can be manipulated because it's garbage in, garbage out. It's what you put in there that you're going to get. And are you surprised that these allegations are coming up? Look, before the elections, the candidates and the party and the campaign, we kept sounding the warning bells. We're concerned about the register. We're concerned about the machine. We're concerned about how voter suppression is the movement of the troops all around. We're concerned. We kept saying about we're concerned about. We even said to the peace committee.
These alarms were being raised because the PDP had anticipated that it might lose the elections, and so was deliberately trying to make people lose faith in the process.
Let me explain something to you. You see, it's sometimes funny because people think that there isn't a science to the behavioral patterns of humans. And if you take the science of the behavioral patterns of human and apply it to the science of, selections, what you call the Q discipline, how people select and how people take decisions, there is a science behind the madness of what you call an election. That's where you have the polling, that's where you have the sampling, that's where you have the estimations, that's why you have what you call the exit polls. Fact of the matter was that there was no basis for Buhari to even an APC to think they can win an election. It wasn't going to happen. The only way they could have won, and I kept screaming, it is statistically impossible for APC to win this election, except of course they go rogue.
That's according to you.
Yeah, according to me. And I think we were shocked as to the extent they will go to defile their own souls. Given that we had come into an election in 2015 where the PDP and Jonathan was in charge, and rather than have the whole country become an embarrassment in front of the Committee of Nations, let's have an election and okay, let it go. And we thought that higher ideal.
You say let it go, are you inferring that President Goodluck Jonathan actually won that election?
How is it possible for any election where underage voting became too rampant, where you could just clearly see the allocation of numbers in an annoying, almost fraudulent, heist manner? How would you have...
But hasn't the PDP benefited from such underage voting in the past?
Never. Never.
Including during the time
Never,
of President
never,
Olusegun
ever,
Obasanjo,
ever, never,
President
ever.
Yar'Adua.
There were
The PDP has never,
allegations.
at any point in time,
There
benefited from
were
underage voting.
allegations as to the validity of the voters register, and that was solved eventually by moving it to some kind of electronic format. And based on the voter register and how many people could claim and how we can authenticate them, there were those issues that needed to be improved. But there has never been any time in the history of our country where anything remotely similar to the mess that went on in 2019 happened. Okay. In 2019, the difference is that all of the systems were designed to ensure that this election can be free, fair, and credible. Some people in high office went out of their way to circumvent the process. Normally, when you get to the polling unit, you're supposed to have your voter's card with you. You're supposed to present it to them. They're supposed to put it into the card reader machine. You're supposed to put your thumb in there. All of these things were to create safeguards. And you're supposed to be handed a paper, and you're supposed to go into a cubicle where you could safely and quietly vote. Ordinarily, you would think that that's foolproof until you now had thugs, crooks, criminal elements conniving with the process and insisting that before our very eyes, except every flicker of truth and honesty have died in you, could you have accepted it?
Well,
at the point.
Yes, we need to move on to some of the other more touchy issues that were raised by the People's Democratic Party. But before we do that, shortly after INEC announced President Muhammadu Buhari as the winner of that election, the PDP candidate Atiku Abubakar rejected the results and actually reeled out a series of allegations against the entire process. Spoke about everything from voter suppression to statistic impossibilities. Well, let's just have a look at that press conference and some of the things that the former vice president said.
Citizens of Nigeria, let me start by thanking you all for choosing democracy as the settled system of government for our great nation. As you all know, democracy is a government of the people and by the people. Only when the people's choice prevails. That did not happen on Saturday, February 23, 2019. On election day, we saw the implementation of grand theft of the people's will. I am not one for hyperbole, so I will just let the facts speak for themselves. In Akwa Ibom, for instance, the results showed a statistical impossibility of a 62% drop in voter numbers from the 2015 elections, even where voter registration and PVC collection rates were much higher than in 2015. This is where voter suppression took place. And you must recall our party made this observation and complaint before the elections, that there were plans to implement voter suppression on PDP or opposition strongholds and voter increase in APC strongholds. This pattern was repeated in strongholds of the People's Democratic Party, including in states like Delta, Rivers, Abia, and Benue states. As this was occurring, we saw another statistical impossibility where voter turnout and numbers increased astronomically in Borno State by an almost miraculous 82% in the midst of insecurity. 82% in Borno State increase. This pattern was also repeated in other strongholds of the All Progressive Congress states. One begins to ask if insecurity is conducive to higher voter turnouts and security is antithetical to high voter turnout. It is further curious that the People's Democratic Party's margin of victory in states outside the Southeast and South-South were extremely slim across board. That again is a statistical impossibility. The fact is that when you calmly look at the numbers declared by the Independent National Electoral Commission as the February 23, 2019 elections, they do not add up at all. Let me say that I am not speaking as a member of the People's Democratic Party. I am speaking as a Nigerian when I say that the electoral fraud perpetrated by the Buhari administration this past Saturday cannot produce a government of the people for the simple reason that it does not reflect the will of the Nigerian people. My dear Nigerians, it is for this reason that I, Atiku Abubakar, reject the results declared by the Independent National Electoral Commission. Declare Muhammadu Buhari as duly returned by the majority of lawful votes. I am conferring with not just my party, but also with the Nigerian people on next steps, which will be revealed to the public shortly. For my fellow Nigerians who feel angry, disillusioned, and let down by the process, I appeal to you to remain calm and steadfast. Rome was not built in a day. We have the real figures. We have the real figures. We have the facts that were spoken so loudly on Saturday, February 23, 2019. As I have always said, this year is my 3 decades in Nigeria's struggle for democracy. But this is the worst election in those 30 years. And I told that to General Abdul Salam 2 nights ago when he called me. I said, not even the military has conducted such a worst election. This is a long journey, but I'm confident of victory. All hope is not lost. Stay strong. Stay strong. By the grace of God, we shall triumph. And to the international investors and friends of Nigeria now pulling out of our country, can you imagine only yesterday by that May announcement, the stock market lost 85 billion? I urge you to be patient and keep faith with the Nigerian people. Your quarrel is not with the Nigerian people. Your quarrel is with those who stole their mandate. Please do not punish the people by divesting from Nigeria. My dear citizens, I thank you all, and may God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
All right, well, welcome back. Now, recently, the All Progressives Congress took on the People's Democratic Party over some results that were released, saying that how could the People's Democratic Party have had access to the INEC server, and calling on the police, the DSS, to investigate the PDP for publishing what they claim to be results that the PDP was trying to smuggle into the INEC server by hacking. What's your response?
You see, sometimes you think that, okay, they've fallen low or they've hit rock bottom, the APC and their spokespeople or people who manage narrative for them, and then the very next minute you find out that they're still dropping even lower than low. In the first instance, this process of election petition is a very clear pathway to address issues. The candidate or whoever is aggrieved has a time limit by which he should prepare his brief and get his stuff ready and place a petition there. And once he places the petition, of course, it's a public document, and there will be things that were alleged that have to be proven when you get before a tribunal. But when you have a senior advocate of Nigeria, so to speak, come before the public and attempts...
You're referring to your counterpart in the All Progressives Congress, Festus
I'm
Keyamo.
sparing myself the need to mention the name. But I am going to do what you call a descriptive narrative that will make everybody understand who. Come into public space and then attempts to say, oh, come and help us hijack them, and come and help us ask them outside the courts before the tribunal has asked that the matters be pleaded on both sides. You just know that they are jokers. What you expect with every election petition is that once the party that is alleging lays this petition, the other side will probably get a copy of it and go and prepare their defense, and then they will be called into open trial. And I'm inviting the entire media and journalists and lawyers and all to be interested in this election 2019 tribunal. Why? Because I have christened it the Nuremberg trial of 2019 elections in Nigeria. Why did I call it so? Because while the Third Reich was reigning, Adolf Hitler was reigning in Europe, there were governments all over the world who couldn't possibly believe the extent of things that was going on until they got to the Nuremberg trials, where they now started to like go over layers and layers and layers and layers of evidence, where they able to say, really? These guys smoked? Oh, so I believe that this trial, if it gets all the attention that it deserves, for whatever it's worth, it's going to give Nigerians the opportunity to just have the scale drop off their eyes, and then they will see how illegitimate their government is trying to be. And then they will probably see...
Did the PDP get access to the INEC server?
I do not know how and where that comment or that, oh, they have server. It's not, it didn't come from PDP. What the PDP said is that we have evidence of what we're going to be proven in court. Among them is that the elections was marred by corrupt practices. Among them is that the total number of votes in the country that Atiku won by about 18 million, a lot more than Buhari can ever get, and that we have an issue with the total number of registered votes that was available at first, 84 million, and suddenly it jumped down to 82 million. Where did 1.6 million go? We have issues with the total number of accredited votes for the presidential election and the suppression that took place. We have issues with whether they followed their own guidelines and the card readers. We have issues with how they were suppressing Atiku's votes and taking from our votes all over the country. We have issues with cancelling in 4,000 171 polling units exceeding the 2,900 and, registered votes as allowed. We had issues with the by-elections in ordinary by-elections in about 14 states. We have issues with
quite a number of
750.
those.
We have, so
You're
these are
certain-
all issues that must be laid before the tribunal. The APC had better go and get ready for its defense. All of this annoying, childish play to the gallery or looking for an excuse to extend their Gestapo style of having the instruments of coercion in the state, police, DSS, and all that to start harassing people would only make us implode the country. At the last
former
count-
Vice President Atiku under pressure to congratulate President Muhammadu Buhari, as has been speculated in the media?
They have begged, they have cried, they have lobbied, they have cajoled. Of course, the agents of the presidency, they have cajoled, they have done everything humanly possible, including weeping and crying, so that he wouldn't go to court. Because they know that in a tribunal, they will be so embarrassed, the word integrity will be an anathema and will be incapable, even from a meta-philosophical point of view, of being used to describe them. They know that they have destroyed every modicum of integrity that they may have. They are well aware of what is at stake. And so they don't want him in court because they don't want the issues discussed. But guess what? Guess what? Atiku understands what his duty and his responsibility is to Nigeria. He knows that he has to go to court, that perhaps we can even strengthen the process from the jurisprudence point of view. We can deepen democracy. And before you get the impression that we're going on some human exercise that doesn't provide any real relief, get back the mandate that the people of Nigeria gave to Atiku and give it back to him. It's not, look, but democracy has a salient golden ethos, which is that you derive your legitimacy from presenting yourself to your citizens and having them vote and making sure their votes count. You don't have a right.
Very quickly, because we do have to round up
Oh,
this
you're always
conversation.
rounding up.
Should things not go well,
Things like what?
and the Supreme Court, or perhaps if this case goes to the Supreme Court, and the former Vice President does not come out victorious, would he be willing to accept the outcome, congratulate President Buhari? and
There have been
perhaps
miscarriages of
cooperate?
listen. There have been, in the history of man, there have been occasions where there have been miscarriage of justice. And so if the miscarriage of justice takes place, and for whatever reason, especially based on the suspicion or the rumor that people just have in this country that you can't go to tribunal for a presidential election and win, which I don't believe, I think he will win. But if a miscarriage of justice takes place, do you know what? Atiku Abubakar would have done the noble thing that a statesman needs to do. He would have surfaced the issues. And I think the judiciary will come through, having looked at it, looked at the merit of it, they would determine that he won that election because he won in truth, he won in deed, he won in fact, and he won credibly.
Thank you very much for your position. We wait to see what the courts are going to say.
I invite you to
about
come to
it.
court. Go to court. Send your journalists there. Go and listen to the stories.
You have a court
You'll
date
be happy.
coming up,
You'll be
sure.
happy with it.
We will certainly keep a close eye on the matter. Thank you so much, Atiku Presidential Campaign Organization spokesperson Segun Showunmi, for taking the time to come here. It's been
Thank
a
you for
pleasure.
having me.
Right, the best of luck with your trial.
Thank you.